Okay, we're now live. How's that?
Beautiful. I can hear.
Excellent, excellent. Well, let's start again. Welcome, Mariam.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for having me.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for coming along. I was just thinking it was only like 4 weeks ago we were together at that book launch event in Melbourne.
Yes, the Able event.
The Able event, yes. Yeah, when you won an award. Very well done. For
Thank
this
you very
book,
much.
which we'll talk
Yes.
about just now. Yes. Well, I meant to ask you. I didn't get to talk to you too much there because it was, all very busy and that. But when we were sitting at dinner, I heard you talking to some people there, and you were telling something about in your childhood, how because you're from Lebanon and how you were escaping from something and there were bombs and you were ducking in bombs and stuff. And I got distracted with another conversation. I never got to ask you, like, what was that all about? So
Well,
can you please?
well, sort of. I'm actually Australian born, so I'm born here. But when I was in my teens and I was married overseas and I had my child, and actually we got caught up in Lebanon and Israel's out of the blue, full blown out war, and we had to escape to Cyprus via boats with the help of the Australian government. So I've definitely witnessed not one, and then a few years later, experienced a civil war. So had my fair shares of wars, I think, to last me a lifetime.
So were you actually in a boat and bombs were falling all around you, or what?
No, so Lebanon and Israel got into a war, and there was more than bombs. There was missiles and bombs and everything, and we had to flee the country in a bat of an eyelid and go to the Beirut Wharf, and then from there take boats that the Australian government had provided to Cyprus while being surrounded by Israeli I think they were warships or whatever they were back then. So it was a very traumatic experience to witness, especially growing up in Australia, never even seeing a gun in my life, let alone missiles and rockets and guns and the rest of it.
That was when they had the issue with Hezbollah, wasn't it?
That's correct. This was in 2006, yes.
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah.
Was quite tumultuous. It was up till then, I think. It was kind of known as the capital was known as the Paris. I was told the Paris of the Middle East. It
Yes.
was quite the place to go to, and like you could just go back and chill. And all of a
It
sudden,
was.
not anymore.
No, unfortunately, like the majority of the Middle East and the majority of the world these days, nowhere is safe. And yes, Lebanon was once upon a time known as Paris of the East, or Switzerland of the East, as it was known for its art and beauty and mountains and scenery. But yes, war unfortunately doesn't leave anything standing.
So how old were you when you were there?
I was 16. I had my son very, very young. I had my oldest at 16. So I was 16 when all of this happened.
Okay. But was it like that from your recollection? Was it like the Paris? Was it like a beautiful place to live in?
It wasn't what my parents told me when they were growing up. It was, crystal clear, amazing country. And then they had a very long civil war. But when I was there was some sort of peace until 2005 when the explosions started to happen again. So it was sort of unrest. But then 2006 onwards, from that, I think war, the infrastructure was ruined. Millions of people were displaced. And since then, it hasn't seen a good day. Just that last year, I think if you saw the nuclear bomb that nearly went off, or they said it was like a nuclear bomb in Lebanon. I think it was the third largest bomb in history to go off and killed so many people. So it hasn't seen any good days since.
I recall that, but sadly, it doesn't get much media attention, does it?
Well, no, it doesn't. Unfortunately, it doesn't.
Yeah, I find it very odd. I remember the Hezbollah thing was like big news, but then we thought, oh well, sort of been there, done that. Lebanon doesn't get much airtime in the media with all of this, like you mentioned.
No, it's a small country. It's a very diverse country. Many sub-religions and cultures in a little country, and Unfortunately, like any country that experiences war, it never. I think people get used to the idea that there's always some sort of unrest and don't pay attention to it.
Yeah, well, I think that's what you sort of cover in your book. Is it? But we'll get to that. But so, how old were you again when you were kind of expedited back to Australia?
I was 16, nearly 17 when we came back. My husband was just turned 20, and we had a 8-month-old with us. I think we were quite the lucky ones because we held a foreign passport, and hell, if you had a foreign passport, you were deemed worthy of saving. Unfortunately, for the millions of people that were left behind, they didn't hold any type of foreign passport, so they were deemed unworthy, and that is absolutely sad and heartbreaking to see that a piece of paper makes all the difference whether you get to live or die.
No, I know it's huge. It's huge. I worked in Doha for a bit, and you may know it, but I was working there with on consulting, doing what I do. And this fellow said to me, he said, no, he was an engineer. He said he was a Palestinian. And he said, we must go and we need this technology. I said, we've just done that in Dubai. I said, we'll go on a plane tomorrow and go back and I'll show you. He said, no, he can't go to Dubai because he doesn't have a passport.
That's right.
I said, what do you mean you don't have a passport? It turns out in 1968, a whole bunch of people, when the Israelis kicked them out, they went to different places. And a lot of them went to Qatar. And as a result, and then later, their passports sort of got, I don't know quite how this happens, but they got cancelled. So I said, but
because no country wanted them. That's why no country, even until this day. I met a lot of Palestinian people that are either lived in Jordan or Lebanon or Syria, and no country would give them citizenship of that country that they've been living for the last 75 years and had kids and grandkids, because they're not citizens of that country, and neither are they allowed to go back to the original country. So they're like in no man's land.
Exactly. It was like, well, to me, having always had an Australian passport, is that I said to him, but you went on the project, worked for the company, it was a construction company, to Vietnam the other day. He said, yes, but they give him a travel document.
Yeah.
The Egyptians issue him with a travel document. So I said, how many people are in Qatar here in this situation? He said, 7,654 or something like that. It was an exact number. That's pretty exactly. He said, we're a pretty tight community because we can't go anyplace. Right? That was like, so in reading your book and hearing your story, I was kind of, I thought, wow, brought back some of my own memories. So you came, when you came back here, Australia, where did you go to Melbourne?
Oh yeah, obviously I've got mum and sisters and family. As I said, me and my sisters, all of us, I'm the oldest out of 10 children. We were all born here, raised here, went to school here. I just went back when I had I even had my son here, and then went back for a short stay in Lebanon before all of this happened. So the plan was to stay a few years. My husband back then was still, in school. He was just out of high school, wanting to start, some sort of career. But it all went to a standstill and halt when this happened. And I guess it's the extreme of anything. Seeing something like that is an absolute extreme that I never thought I'd ever imagine to have lived in my life. But to my in-laws and people of Lebanon, they found it absolutely normal. I don't think they batted an eyelid because they're so used to a civil war. So this was just a bigger version of what they've used to for the last 20, 30 years.
Yeah, I know you do get custom. I lived in Africa, mostly South Africa, for decades, and you do get used to it. It becomes the normal, becomes your normal, and then you say, "Oh, how big's your fence?" Well, I make mine bigger, whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
It becomes the normal, and it's like, and when you come here, I don't know, how did you find it when you've told people here about what happened to you? I
don't think they can fathom or understand exactly how big of a I'm not going to say a trauma, because obviously I don't think I'll ever forget it. And then especially the civil war that we got caught up with later on, a few years later down the track by chance, with three of my children had a bigger impact on this one, because the civil war is, your enemy could be your neighbor. It could be your best friend that you went to school with. It could be, the person that you bought groceries with down the street a few days ago, not just because you shared a different religion. They may be from the same sect, same religion, but they share different political views. I think that's what shocked me more than the big Israel and Lebanon war, was these were your own neighbors and family and friends. How could you, for a political point of view, kill each other? So, and people here don't understand, when you've witnessed something like that, your whole perception and everything that you ever believed in about society just goes out the drain. And just to add something, it was so funny watching here in COVID in Melbourne, because we were nearly locked up for 2 years, people fighting over toilet paper in the supermarkets. And I kept telling my husband, I can't believe in Australia, if we were ever to go to war, what would people do to each other? You're supposed to help each other out, not fight.
And baked beans, don't forget baked beans.
Yeah, it was just so embarrassing to witness.
We had the same thing over here in Perth. We had some people, and then they rationed it. I'm going to come back to this topic. Then they rationed it, and only one person could get like a big packet. So you see people pitching up with all of their children and send money with the packet. Then the next one, they're throwing them all in the back of their Land Cruiser.
We had people pulling each other's hair here. It was just an absolute disgrace to see.
I think, you know what? I think that civil war there, the Americans often go on about their civil war, but it was like two parties, two groups, and it was only two groups, and the divide was pretty clear. But in the civil war that you're speaking about, it was many more secular things, if that's the correct word, fighting against it. It was a far more complex situation. You almost have to put it on a whiteboard and go, and
100%, Mike. I stayed there for nearly 7 months. The idea was that I was going to be there only for a couple of weeks. We're going to go see my in-laws back with the children. We were there for months. We couldn't even get out. And for the months that I was there, I couldn't work out who's the enemy against who, because it was basically every third street had a different political view who was against the other street. And you just didn't know. There was no story to try and follow to put the thread together. And until this day, I don't understand who was against who and what was the actual reason. No one can give you a clear explanation of why they are fighting.
Even today, I know it's like, it's a good topic for you for another book, eh? It'd be quite complex, actually, put that sort of thing together. I think. But tell me that, what actually prompted you to write this particular book, The Olive Tree?
So basically, from that experience, many years later, I always loved writing anyway. I hold a Bachelor of Literature and Composition, that took me years to do as I was having my children, and always had a love for writing. But, one day I thought, I'd pen The Olive Tree just as a maybe as a trauma outlet. It's a fictional book. Nothing of it is true, but a lot of it is, bits and pieces of memory that I recall in the last, 15 years of my life. And I wrote it in the hope that, maybe one day I'd share it just maybe with my own kids, never thinking it will turn into a book and I'll publish it to the world, because really, anytime I told anyone about it, no one would believe that I could write anything worthy of people reading and liking. But when the pandemic hit, I thought, what, if the pandemic can change people's life and we don't know what can happen, the next day is not promised. Well, I'm just gonna get this book out to the world and hope that I can change one person's perspective on how children pay the ultimate price in any war.
Yeah, they do. It's always better to be in the army and not be the civilians.
Yes.
Because I always like this quaint American term they use, what's it called, for casualties? Oh, well, that's the word escapes me at the moment. It'll come back to me now. But yeah, the children and women and children are the ones who suffer in any war.
And children more than women, or more than men, more than adults. And I witnessed it firsthand. And the problem is with third world countries, or any war in particular, it doesn't matter the amount of therapy this child later on gets in life. That's if, and put 10 lines under if they had the means to seek therapy for that child. Because, in these parts of the world, and in most of our cultures, unfortunately, mental health is shunned upon and not even acknowledged as something a human goes through. They never heal. It stays with them our entire lifetime and causes so many tidal waves of problems as that person heads into adulthood and then makes their own family. I don't know if there's much studies done on this.
There is some, and then they're like PTSD is obviously a topic. That's what you talk about. But they actually talk about things called generational inherited PTSD.
Yes.
Yeah, like it somehow comes through in the genes. It's sort of documented. Whether this person could have it, but yet they never really had any real trauma in their life. But it looks like they got it. So I was going to ask you another question, but back to the olive tree. So how do you go about writing a book? I know what I wanted to ask you. You've also got this skincare business I read about.
Yes.
What's that?
So,
what do you do?
Yeah, so I founded Eve Skin during the pandemic, just before the pandemic hit, and then sort of things went downhill as the pandemic hit, because, as I said, no one was interested in buying any skincare products. We were fighting over toilet paper in the supermarkets, and literally. So I got depression from the lack of sales and being locked up, and that's just a little bit after that. I released the olive tree because it was just everything was toppling over each other. I thought, what else? What's the worst thing that can happen after everything that's happened to me? I don't think, and not just to me, to the entire planet. So I might as well give it a clue. But yes, Eve Skin is my handmade organic skincare company that now we have grown, around the globe. I'm very proud of it. It's my baby that I've grown up, just like the olive tree.
When you say handmade, what do you got? A bunch of ladies making?
Oh no, we have a chemist that formulates a beauty chemist that formulates in a laboratory, hand makes all our products for us. You never make skincare at home. It's a very big no-no.
Okay. I've done a lot of consulting for pharmaceutical companies, so I was very interested in.
And there it is. I've actually got a bottle of it next to me. There's Eve Skin.
Okay, but
there's one of my moisturizers.
So where do you do the assembly and all, and put it all together with the mixing machine and all that good stuff?
Yeah, so that's done in a lab in Australia here. So it's actually handmade. There's not really much machinery because this is the beauty of it. It's organic ingredients, handmade in a lab for sterilization purposes by a professional chemist. And then we ship them off here. We get them to our warehouse here. And then we just, we label and pack and distribute orders. We've reached, last time we had an order of Switzerland, Africa. So we're trotting along. We launched in Qatar nearly 2 years ago as well.
So what do the skin products cater for, or cater to, I should say?
So all skin types, especially sensitive skin, rosacea, acne. That's what our range is. But everyone, men, women, children, can use the entire range.
Because my wife and I went on a plane trip to the Abrolhos Islands off here about a week back, and you can see the remnants of. Yeah.
I need to send you some of our products then.
I was going to say, do you think I could use a bottle or 6?
You definitely could. You definitely could.
So where do you sit and write? How do you write? Do you go into the bush and meditate and?
Oh no. believe it or not, I can't write unless I'm upset. It astounds people that I say this, but writing for me, yes, I cannot write if I'm in a very, very good mood. Because especially the type of fiction, say I write fiction with a purpose and it has a story and a very deep meaning. It takes a lot of emotions out of me, and to get into the characters is already depressing because the whole story is depressing. I can't be happy; it will just ruin me, and I can't write how we were taught in university to write. I've got my style is completely different. I can't be really too happy, and it has to be very late at night when the kids and everyone's asleep. And I have to write it on paper first before I type it up. It has to go on paper. So there's a whole routine.
So do you write with anger?
Not with anger. It has to be with a bit of sadness. It's very hard. It's not. I'm not angry, and I'm not happy. It has to have a bit of sadness, or I have to be in that mood of, because as you read The Olive Tree, there's so much trauma in it, and to be inside the character's head, because each character's feelings are different. You really need to be in the mood, and hence why I cannot write big chunks at one time. It just takes a week out of me to feel better again and then start again. So it takes a long time to finish a book, a very long time for me.
So which in your book here? Oh, sorry. Before we get on to it, where do you go to sit and write?
Oh, in my lounge, pitch black. If I'm on the laptop rewriting, or if I'm or just barely some light. If I'm pen and paper.
Mariam, you make it sound like a cave. You've just described a cave.
That's the writing style I have. There's no. That's how the style that I write.
And how long do you normally sit at your keyboard?
Max 2 hours. I make sure that I don't stay more than that. As I said, then it just I make sure that I just do 2 hours stints at a time, and then just try and close it.
Okay. That's actually not a bad. But how do you finish when you're writing? So you're 2 hours up. Where do you finish?
Oh, so I just make sure that I finish the paragraph or the page or the idea that I'm in. And the other thing is, I've already got the story in my head from A to Z. When I get the idea, I don't write as I go along. So I already know what's going to happen and where everything goes. It's just writing it on paper and fleshing it out. It's a bit different than what people do, but especially with my second book that I'm writing, I've already, I can tell it to you from A to Z. I just need to write it, flesh it out for myself to see, and then just really go deep into the emotions of each character.
Well, why do you think you need to write it on paper first of all before you? And that's the first part of the question. Second one is, when you take it from the paper to the laptop, do you change it, or do you copy it, just type it out verbatim?
No, I do change it. No, because my first ideas, I like to write just a bit. I don't know, just an old. I'm very old school and love pen and paper, and find that my creativity is better when I hold a pen and write it down. But then I may change a few words or a few sentences as I'm typing it back up, or might remember something. But usually it's what I have on paper is what I'm going to type back up.
Okay, that's quite interesting. And so you actually, because I'm thinking about, who was it? I forget which writer. I think it was maybe Hemingway. He always used to like to finish at a point where he knew he would continue. So it never really, it was 2 hours up. He never really finished it.
Well, no, I make sure that the last point that I have is like just it's like an end of episode when you're watching something. The episode, it's a cliffhanger, and we're going to continue from. Okay. Sometimes I go back and look at the last two sentences I've written, and I'm like, nah, that's not what I want. And the other interesting thing, especially with the Olive Tree, as I grew older in age, because this was like a 3-year journey of me writing, my perspective changed, and I crossed out and rewrote so many pages of it, because You know, what I thought at 21 was different than when I was 25 or 26. And as you grow older and your experiences in life, your thoughts and perspective on a specific topic changes. So then you
So,
change.
so which character changed the most in this over the 3-year journey?
I think I changed the mother the most. Nada.
That's funny enough. That's what I figured.
Nada changed a lot as my own children grew up, and as I had more kids. And then I guess my mother's name's also Nada. I guess Nada is a character that, you know, she had only one side when I started off, because being a very young age, I just thought she was always in the wrong. And then as I grew older in age and my kids and had more kids, I sort of felt her ideas and perspective from her mother's side. So gave her another dimension to her character and understood her a little bit more. So she was changed a lot.
No, I can almost see it. Is that as a, I don't want to make it a spoiler alert, but yes, I won't say anymore. It's a bit of a spoiler alert if I say.
She changes, and Nada's a very realistic character of a human, you know, changing perspective as they get older with their new circumstances. She's very relatable and true.
Yeah. So when you wrote this book, you know, is it and your experiences in Lebanon and that, and we're talking about it earlier. Why didn't you write it about Lebanon? Why did you bring it back to Palestine?
Because when I was writing, I thought, where on this planet Earth is the most and the longest war ever? And Palestine, you know, was a flag in itself. They've had 40 something or 70 something, I think it's 75 years of constant war. But this book isn't. It's just based in that area. But you know, if people have read it, will understand. It doesn't speak about religion. It doesn't really speak about politics. It speaks about the essence of humanity, and again about children, and as these kids grow up, and what happens to them in life, and how war changes them and their whole entire direction.
But how do you fit all this in with your skincare business and 5 children and a husband? You know, I think husbands should get a lot more attention. But anyway, that's just a view.
I also co-founded Mackay Minerals with my sister, a mineral makeup company. So I've got that, and I do business coaching, and I do a lot of things, Mike. A lot of things.
So what is this mineral thing?
We've got mineral makeup, Mackay Minerals, an Australian organic mineral makeup company as well, that me and my sister co-founded after Eve's Skin. So Eve's was by myself, and then Mackay, we share that together. And then recently formed Force de Femme, a women's empowerment group and business coaching. So yes, I do a lot, but I enjoy every bit of it. And to answer your question, how I fit it in, I just multitask and try, and you know, everything's on a schedule, so I'm able to fit in everything that I want to do.
So what does this other product do? This mineral product?
Mineral makeup. So it's just makeup, just mineral makeup. So natural forms of a form of makeup.
How does it differ to the other product?
It's mineral makeup is actually from the ground. It's actually mica, a sort of a powder that you find, or actually granite that you. Yeah, mica. It's called mica, and from that we make. So it's a natural pigmentation in it. We make makeup from it. So it's a very interesting natural makeup composition.
Going back to your first business, how did you get involved in that? I mean, your background is not in...
Eve's came by pure coincidence. I had one big business that failed, and I was nearly bankrupt, and many months before that, I've got very, very sensitive skin. Although I'm Lebanese background, I've got such fair skin, it will burn under a light bulb. And I was always researching and seeing what is affordable and organic for my skin, and that I can use or even try and make. And then I stumbled across these ingredients and found the chemist, and it started as a business, just, you know, family and friends to make a few dollars, and then it just expanded from there. So Eve's was never meant to be a business for me.
So it was basically for yourself and thought, what can I do? And then the whole thing got legs.
Yeah, exactly. I think people loved it, and everyone said, try a little website, try a few more products, and then from there we sort of grew.
And the second one was the same story.
No, Micah, actually, I believe it or not, I'm not a big makeup fan myself, but my sister is. And so sort of we were talking about, if people were using organic skincare and then they were using chemically filled laden products, how was that benefiting? And then we thought, well, maybe there's an alternative to that. And that's how Micah was born. But she's more of the person that, my sister, that understands makeup and has a big love for it, whereas I'm sort of the brains that understands marketing and all my experience with Eve. So we combined together and launched Micah Minerals.
Wow. Okay. So what's next? You said you're working on another book.
Yes. How long that's going to be, I have no idea. So Souls of the Devil, I am probably nearly halfway through that, and Souls of the Devil is very full on.
Soul of the Devil. I guess you can't tell us anything about it, or is that still?
Oh, I could just say that it talks about a lot of the things our communities don't talk about: narcissism, religious abuse, incest. What do you want? Rape. Everything, segregation, bigotry, everything under the roof in one little book.
It's going to be about the size of this book, or?
Oh, probably double that.
Double that. Okay. So what are you looking like? About 90,000, 100,000 words?
Probably.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's but that's a lot of topics to cover.
It is, but it's weaved into a story where you don't feel like that you are being bombarded with all of these. It flows. It actually flows into a very interesting story of two families, and then it grows from that. But I hope, so far I've shared snippets of it online, and the feedback's just been really overwhelming, and everyone's waiting for that one to come out. I think more than the olive tree, because it has so much topics that everyone can sort of relate to.
There are some similarities in concept between that and the olive tree, and it's about two families. Well, starts off a bit with two families.
Well, very little similarities, because it starts off, yes, with two families, because there's always two sides to everything. One person can't do anything. There always has to be another person or family across, the catalyst. But yes, this one starts off and this one's based in Turkey. So this one was Palestine. This one's Turkey now, and it starts from the 70s and then moves on and explains a whole family journey as well. And the essence of the book is looks can be deceiving, and never judge a book by its cover, because what's inside is more rotten than what's on the outside.
I wanted to ask you, I mean, my own books are not set in Australia. They're set out of San Francisco. But how do you find that the Australian readers relate to your books when they're set in places that they've never even been? I don't think I've met an Australian person who's been to Palestine. A friend of mine went to Turkey the other day, but that's about it.
I think they very, very well, because people get attached to the characters, not to the setting. Because if you were to remove the main characters, Nisma and Hannah, and put them in Africa or in Australia or wherever you'd put them, the struggles, this essence of the struggles are all the same. So people get attached to the characters and to the story more than to where the place is.
Do you think it would have been better if you'd have said it in Australia? That it would have worked better? Or America?
No, because we're very lucky, very, very lucky in Australia we don't have the poverty and the violence and the war that these countries have experienced. And although there's good and bad in everywhere, we here don't have that. So it's very unrealistic to set such a story in such a country where we've got Centrelink here, we've got Australian government help, we've got so much help that they don't have over there. So the story would have had no essence.
Look, look, we do have poverty here, and we do have those abuse things that you mentioned. The difference is when, and I've worked in Africa a lot, I've worked in India, it's the scale.
Yes.
I mean,
Very true.
when I first worked in India and I was in Mumbai, and a guy took me, I went outside the back of my five-star hotel and it was like slums, you know, and I found some youngster took me to a temple over there, and it turned out that he took me through to the original Hare Krishna temple. But as you walk through it, you look at the scale of it and you think, how do you fix this thing? and that's the thing. I agree with you. I don't know how you, if you put down some of those stories here in Melbourne, they go, no, not believable.
And that's what I mean when I say we do have some poverty here and we have homelessness, but we also have the choice of you seeking some sort of help here, or there's some sort of charity or some sort of assistance, someone that is willing, if you need a hand, someone will pull you out. But as I witnessed firsthand, there is no, at least in where I was in Lebanon, or when I've traveled a little bit and seen, there's that such thing, the infrastructure for help does not exist. It's each man for themselves.
Yeah. And that's why in places like Africa, which I know well, corruption is so rife.
Yes. Yeah.
And will continue to be.
Yeah.
That will continue to be, because that's the only
Same
way.
Same in Lebanon. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. We used to always call it the African handshake, you know. So wow, it's been really wonderful talking to you, eh?
Thank you so much for having me. Likewise.
So when do you think that this new book will see the light of day?
Well, I'm really trying to this Christmas and in the school holidays, maybe really press the gas pedal and try and can in the next couple of months try and finish at least most of it. If I can finish by mid next year, all of it, I really want to get it out to people to read. But yeah, it just depends on how, if I can write it, because it's so much deep topics that I don't know if and sometimes I don't even know if I want to talk about these stories or peel back those layers, because it's just too traumatic.
You mean traumatic in the telling, or traumatic where you've known those instances?
Both, because the way I write is it's either someone that I know personally has been through a similar situation, or I've been through a situation, and sometimes deep down you don't want to relive those memories because they're just not pleasant to live through. And if I haven't, the character that's living that is just it's another nightmare in itself.
Yep, I'm looking forward to this next one. So it will be the same but different. Is that fair to say?
It'll be the same as in the topic wise?
No, yeah, no. In theme, as in
in theme. It'll be. I will always write fiction with a purpose. There will always be a purpose behind it, but very completely different to the olive tree. But yes, you will definitely see and feel a purpose in Souls of the Devil.
Well, I'm really looking forward to that. Mariam, it's been wonderful having you.
Thank you very much.
And I'm looking forward to seeing your book come out. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Mike. See ya.
There we